Hello and welcome to the $1 Million Date with Jeff Gordon. I'm Fred Wagenhals of Action Performance Companies. As a leading manufacturer of licensed merchandise in the motorsports industry, Action Performance is proud to bring you this exceptional one-hour program, highlighting the history and challenges of one of racing's most cherished and sought-after achievements, the Winston Million. So sit back and enjoy this special presentation as we wish Jeff the very best on his $1 Million Date.
Americans have always been in love with their cars. And this love affair is the reason stock car racing has been our passion for over half a century. What started out as simple contests played out on dirt tracks and sandy beaches has grown into the #1 spectator sport in the country. From the start, crowds would come from miles around to cheer on their local heroes who raced with wild abandon. Fans thrilled at seeing extraordinary cars race by at breathtaking speeds. In 1947, the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing was formed. Eventually, NASCAR and R.J. Reynolds would create a powerful alliance that would give birth to one of the great challenges in the history of automobile racing, the Winston Million. Daytona, Talladega, Charlotte, and Darlington. The crown jewels of NASCAR dare racers to capture at least 3 of their 4 checkered flags. And in the process, $1 million. Since its inaugural year, each driver has fallen short. Now, the latest suitor of the Winston Million prepares for his $1 Million Date.
Down the straightaway they come for the finish. Bill Elliott with some very anxious moments. The left rear rubbing that quarter pedal badly coming off turn 4.
And that's the guy that could win a bonus of $1 million. Oh, he's in the wall! Jared is in the wall!
$1 Million Date with Jeff Gordon. Presented by Action Performance Companies, the undisputed leader in licensed merchandise for the motorsports industry.
The Winston Million. It all comes down to Darlington, the granddaddy of the super speedways. $1 million is won or lost right here. Hi, I'm Jeff Gordon, and I'm proud to be one of the fortunate few to get a chance at $1 Million Date. It's exciting and a real challenge. Every driver who's picked up a little Darlington stripe knows that this track is too tough to tame.
Darlington is NASCAR's original super speedway. There were no Daytonas, Talladegas, Michigans. This was it. Harold Brasington actually built this raceway, and he was way ahead of his time. If you think back in late 40s, went to Indianapolis to see the race and came back here to Darlington and said, I'm going to build a racetrack like Indianapolis, and we're going to run stock cars on it. And he started going around town and got some land where there had been peanuts and cotton, and and there were no blueprints, what did you compare it to back then? Everybody around here thought Harold was a nut.
They thought I'd had a sunstroke, maybe my brains were French fried, but that wasn't so, because I had a dream and I was going to fulfill it.
The original layout called for a true oval racetrack, but it had to be modified when the peanut farmer who owned the land insisted that his pond just outside turn 2 not be disturbed. This gave Darlington its unique egg shape and is one of the reasons the high bank, narrow track is such a challenge.
It was like a guy went in and started building the racetrack, and he built one end and went off for a while and forgot what he was doing and came back and decided to add another end, but he had a different vision for that part of the racetrack. And the odds of you winning there aren't very good.
It's 1 3/8 miles, and it doesn't get any tougher. When you go in there, you know you got to race the track. Well, that'd be really nice if you're out there by yourself. But when you put 42 cars out there on a track was only ever meant to run 130 mile an hour on it max, and we qualified 175. So we're going 40 mile an hour faster than the track was ever meant for us to go on. You had all the cars, all the competition, and then the degree of difficulty there is higher than it is anywhere else. If 10 is the toughest, then it's a 10.
It's a tough track. In fact, it's a little bit easier now than it was back then. Back then, it had a one-groove track through 3 and 4. And about the fastest way to get around the racetrack was rub the guardrail a little bit. Get up high and come off 4, real fast. And of course, when you did that, it would make a stripe of the guardrail right down the side of the car. And it sounded like the whole side of the car was coming off, but I think I run one race here that I didn't get up and rub the guardrail at the time.
The Southern 500 made its debut here in 1950. People laughed at the idea of stock cars racing for 500 miles on an oval. That had never been done. The question was, would people even come to watch?
As it turned out, it seems like everybody in South Carolina showed up. They had 25 or 30,000 people. I mean, they had a car of every make. They had drivers from all over the country. I mean, they had Cadillacs, Oldsmobiles, you name it. And the winner, Johnny Mance, was driving a 1950 Plymouth right off the street. Roll it out of the showroom and run it down there in the pits, and that was the race car. What a day that must have been.
The granddaddy of NASCAR was born, and the first crown jewel was set. In those early years, because it was the first stock car track paved in asphalt, Darlington was nicknamed the Lady in Black. Now, it's simply known as the track that's too tough to tame. When we return, we'll take a look at the birth of the Winston Million and a legendary track that began on a beach.
$1 Million Date with Jeff Gordon, presented by Action Performance Companies and Quaker State.
I really look forward to starting the new racing season. When expectations fill every owner, driver, crew chief, and mechanic, it can only mean one thing: the Daytona 500. It's a Super Bowl of NASCAR, and it's our most prestigious race. In 1936, on a stretch of beach in Daytona, Florida, race-hungry fans gathered to watch stock cars battle the sand, the wind, the tide, and each other in a grueling race. In the end, the sand defeated most of the drivers, and an early tide stopped the race short, but racing fever had hit Daytona. As the sport's popularity grew, the crowds and the tide proved to be too much for that stretch of beach, so in 1958, ground was broken for the 2.5-mile Daytona International Speedway.
What they've done is take racing off the sand and put it into this multi-million-dollar race plant, the famous Daytona International Speedway, a 2.5-mile tri-oval course that's said to be the fastest track in the world.
The second crown jewel was now in place.
I love Daytona because that's when everybody's the happiest. You're enthusiastic. You've got the greatest car, you got the greatest crew, you got the greatest sponsor, you got a new paint job, you got new uniforms. Everything's perfect. But there's a lot to be said for people that win any race at Daytona, but particularly the Daytona 500, because no matter what else we ever do, that's still traditionally our Super Bowl.
By 1985, NASCAR and Winston were enjoying their 14th year as one of the most successful sports marketing marriages in history. But instead of sitting on their success, RJR added fuel to the competitive fire by offering a bonus like none other.
You know, the Winston Cup Series was based on all tracks being equal, and it is still that way today. At the same time, there are events out there like the Daytona 500, which is the most prestigious, the Winston 500, which is the fastest at Talladega, Coca-Cola 600, which is the longest, and the one that has the most heritage to it, which was the Southern 500, which is now the Mountain Dew 500. So we looked at those events and we said, can we put up a program? Can we make something happen there? Let's put up $1 million for anybody that can win 3 of the 4 races. And let's just see what happens.
In 1985, you would have thought that the entire area around here was just at the point of explosion over the fact that the possibility that one person driving a race car could win $1 million.
For most drivers, winning any one of the crown jewel races in a season was a feat. Winning 3 seemed inconceivable.
I remember being at the banquet in New York in '84 and RJR announcing this deal, and thought, man, that'd be great. But see, I'd never won any of those places, and with the exception of Charlotte. But to put yourself in a position to win it, I never dreamed I would have that opportunity.
How many chances do you have at winning $1 million and winning 3 of 4 specific races in a year? And you know, I looked at it as just an opportunity to be a part of history. You know, a championship is the ultimate for a driver. Winning certain races is what you want to do. But the Winston Million has kind of its own place, that we're talking about having to win 3 of 4 specific races. And that's very difficult to do, to set your sights on that. I mean, people would do a lot of things and crazy things to win even 3 races, much less 3 of these big races. And it stands alone as something very special in each driver's heart.
So with a new incentive and the odds stacked against them, drivers prepared for the '85 season, knowing with a few good breaks, any one of them could make history. But it would have to begin at Daytona.
If a driver could only win 1 race, I can tell you, it would be the Daytona 500. That race alone makes legends of men and their machines. In a moment, we'll meet some of those legends.
$1 Million Date with Jeff Gordon, presented by Action Performance Companies and Burger King. Long before R.J. Reynolds conceived of rewarding drivers with the Winston Million, 2 legendary champions accomplished the Triple Crown achievement. In 1969, Leroy Yarborough won the Daytona 500, the 600 at Charlotte, and the Southern 500 at Darlington. Many would argue that Yarborough was one of the most talented drivers to ever sit behind the wheel of a race car. He had a hard-charging style and was one of the most flamboyant personalities on and off the track.
Great competitor, a lot of fire inside, and it's hard to believe that he never won this. Tremendous concentration is what I remember and seeing at him as a driver.
When David Pearson hit the NASCAR scene in 1960, track promoters called him Little David because of the way he rode into town and slew the big-name Goliath in the area. At the 1976 Daytona 500, Pearson left the crowds breathless with one of the most dramatic finishes in NASCAR Winston Cup history, overcoming certain defeat and arch-rival Richard Petty.
As they hit the banking, they're 3 abreast with a lap car. Pearson moves in front of the SCT Dodge. Petty comes back to the inside. They almost touch as they move down low in the banking. They're going to be side by side as they exit the bank and head for the finish line.
Richard Petty goes back in front. They both spin. They're in the wall. Petty is slamming into the wall. He's coming down toward the finish line. Will he make it? He's still moving. The car stops 300, 400 feet shy of the finish line. Pearson is still running. Here's Petty trying to fire to come across the line. David Pearson moving down through as they come to the stripe. The winner is car number 21.
when we hit, I didn't know where he was at, and I was spinning around, and the Wood boys said I was on the radio talking to them while I was spinning, hollering, "Where's he at? Where's he at?" Because I couldn't see him on kind of the smoke and stuff coming up. But after we stopped and everything cleared, you know, I kept on going.
On the wings of that amazing victory, Pearson went on to claim the checkered flags at Charlotte and Darlington.
If David Pearson was driving right now, he'd still be hard to beat, because when you got him in places like Charlotte, Darlington, the speedways, super speedways, he was practically unbeatable. He was smart. He had a wonderful crew. He had a Ford, but he was still the car to beat.
I loved the way he raced. Pearson was one of those kind of guys, when I was in my prime and when I was winning a lot and he was still going along pretty good in the 21 car, I'd always, man, you'd see him. He's just ahead of you, and you're just about ready to lap him. Boy, if I get that 21 car lap down, I'll win this race, no doubt about it. And you're driving, I mean, you're driving your heart out, and he's just right up there, and you're going, and then the caution will come out. And the next thing you know, you're riding along under caution, and you've raced a little while, and you look over, and there's Pearson right beside you. And he's sitting over there, and he's got that little sly grin on. He pushes that cigarette lighter in. He lights that cigarette up, taking a couple of drags off that cigarette, and you say, uh-oh, I think I'm in trouble. And you can pull them gloves up as high as you want to. You can pull them over your elbows, and he'd check out on you with 10 to go every week. He must have won every race I ever saw him win. You didn't even know he was out there. You'd never hear anything about David Pearson until 10 to go. And you look over and you say, where did he come from? And man, when he got there, he was gone. He was the silver fox. There's no question about that. I saw him do it to Richard. I saw him do it to Cale. I saw him do it to Bobby. I saw him do it to Darrell Waltrip. So he's my hero. Silver Fox.
By any name, David Pearson was one of stock car racing's all-time greatest. At the end of his career, he had amassed an incredible 105 Grand National Winston Cup wins, and his achievements of 1976 would not be challenged for a decade.
Well, in '76, I won Daytona, Darlington, and Charlotte. I didn't get the money, but they wasn't paying the money back then, and since they're doing now. So I talked to Jeff a while ago, and I told him that Jim Hunter told me if he won it, he would give me half of it. That's the reason I'm here today.
You know, the Charlotte Motor Speedway is a special place to me. That's where I picked up my very first NASCAR Winston Cup win. That was an emotional day. As the track at Daytona was still under construction, the dream of building a third super speedway was becoming a reality in Charlotte, North Carolina. In its inaugural race in 1960, the newly paved surface of the D-shaped track began to break up under the pressure of the thundering steel and rubber. The winner took the checker by dodging chunks of peeling asphalt and debris. So from a rough beginning, the third crown jewel emerged as the Charlotte Motor Speedway, home of the longest race in NASCAR, the Coca-Cola 600.
That as a driver, it's a race that you'd like to win because that's a grueling race. That other 100 miles, it sets that race apart from all the others. There are no other 600-mile races. I mean, you're looking at a race that's getting right on the verge of being an endurance race. It takes a special car, it takes a special effort on the driver and the crew and everybody else to prepare a car to run that other 100 miles. Most of the ones I won, the 5 I won in that last 100 miles.
Coming up, we'll meet the man known as $1 Million Bill. Stick around.
$1 Million Date with Jeff Gordon, brought to you in part by Food Lion, Team Monte Carlo, and Chevrolet.
This is Darlington's historic Brazington Grandstand. Isn't this great? This is the only covered seating left in NASCAR. I'll tell you another place that's really historic is the Speedway at Talladega, Alabama, the biggest, fastest, most competitive motorsports facility in the world. NASCAR records are made and broken there. The high bank turns allow cars to run flat out the entire length of the track, reaching incredible speeds. It's these speeds of up to 200 miles per hour that force you not only to respect the track, but also the competitors around you. Built in 1967, the first race there resulted in one of the biggest controversies in NASCAR history. The raw speed the cars were reaching during qualifying began to tear up the tires, shredding a 2-inch strip in the center after only a few laps. It got so bad that many of the top drivers pulled out. In time, the track that began with such a rocky beginning would emerge as the 4th crown jewel of NASCAR and the proud home of the Winston Select 500.
At Talladega, a fearless driver from Georgia would set the world stock car qualifying record in 1987. But 2 years earlier, Bill Elliott, his dad George, and brothers Ernie and Dan prepared for a $1 million season.
You know, it was just a lot of guys from around here that we put together, and it was pretty much a building block, and we were kind of out of the loop of what was going on everywhere else, and it kind of made it unique. You know, I wasn't a name that had been a long generation of racing, a new guy on the block.
As Daytona neared, the $1 million bonus seemed out of reach for the Elliott team. In 3 seasons, they had never won the Daytona 500, the Winston 500, nor the Southern 500. But awesome Bill from Dawsonville had a winning combination, a good car and a great team.
Well, you know, I had a T-Bird like everybody else at that point in time, you know, but we were a small team and worked hard on a lot of different things. You know, Ernie was doing extremely well on motors, and we'd found a lot of power there. We just found the right thing that worked for us. I'd run well at Daytona for a lot of years. You know, I'd finished well and put myself in a good position, but I'd never felt like I had an opportunity to win.
The number 9 Melling T-Bird screamed a victory. The competition literally burned out trying to keep up. Bill Elliott had easily won the first leg of the Winston Million. Next came the Winston 500 at Talladega. He would need to come from behind to win this one.
When the race started, we had an oil line come loose on the car, and we had to stop. And we lost about a lap and a half, but it really didn't put us that far out of sync as far as, you know, sure, we stopped a little early, but still it allowed us to go farther the next go-round. But we ran well. We made up all the time on the racetrack. My car handled well and ran well, and that's how I beat most of the guys there. And a lot of the guys fell out. You know, they were trying to do things just to kind of keep up. You know, we were working hard and everything coming together at that point in time.
The hard-earned victory brought Elliott a win away from the million. He needed a win at Charlotte. He was comfortable there and knew the track well. But nothing could have prepared this young man, who was more comfortable under a hood than in front of a microphone, for the crush of attention that was to come.
It was kind of a media, too much of a media event for me, because I never was in the limelight anyway. And with everything that went on that weekend, it kind of took away from our effort. You know, there was 12 guys here in this shop doing the cars and the engines. And I mean, we worked a lot of nights, 24 hours, and did a lot of stuff. And, you know, I couldn't, you know, when I was gone away from the race car, that was time I needed to be spending on the cars. What people didn't understand at that point in time was I was a crew guy like anybody else, and it was a hard deal to get through.
After only 13 laps, it was clear that the Winston Million would not be won on this day. Darlington was Bill Elliott's last chance to grab the brass ring. Once again, all eyes were on number 9.
And by the time we got to Darlington, I mean, the frenzy had built. And poor guy couldn't even work on his car, you know. He was being pulled in every direction. He ended up having to have highway patrol escorts everywhere he went. It really turned into almost a circus. And so I think we all learned from that. We didn't know how big it was going to be. We didn't realize when you gave a guy $1 million to do something, it was going to cause that much interest.
First year, I told our chairman, Jerry Longwell, it's only been done twice in the history of the sport. We probably won't have to pay this out. It'll be a great publicity program for us, and it'll work well. The chairman looks over at me, and he said, Wayne, he said, what are you going to do if Bill wins this race today? I don't think you budgeted the money. And he was right. We had not budgeted the $1 million to pay it out.
But soon enough, the track, too tough to tame, reached up to snatch victory from Elliott's grasp.
Bill had transmission line come loose. Car goes up in smoke. He's running around. Jerry looked over at me and he said, well, that just saved you $1 million. And I said, yeah, it sure did. Come down. Ernie and the guys came over the wall, fixed the transmission, put him back out.
At Darlington, a talented crew is an absolute necessity. But sometimes you need a miracle.
Front for the front position in the 36th annual Southern 500. Yarborough trying to play the rabbit, Bill Elliott playing the hound. He's got $1 million up for grabs, and one guy from nearby Sardis. And oh no! An engine, it looks like it's gone away on Cale Yarborough. And look at Elliott go down on the apron trying to get around. Bill Elliott with some very anxious moments. Fortunately for him, the entire field behind him senses the situation and let him go.
You know, the biggest thing I remember was going down in third turn and Cale's car starting to smoke, and what had happened was he broke a power steering line. You know, and I thought he might have blown up, and I passed him and beat him back to the start-finish line.
Bill Elliott had tamed the track at Darlington and raced his way to a $1 million victory.
This is the kind of moment that you're going to want to share with your entire family. There he is, Bill Elliott, savoring the spoils of victory, and a well-deserved victory it is. Getting into the car with Ned Jarrett, there'll be a special victory lap.
You know, I don't think any of the fans left. It was, got out of the car, they carried me around the racetrack, and all the things that happened in Victory Lane. I think it took several days for that to sink in, you know, pretty wild.
Winning the Winston Million was an incredible accomplishment for the Elliott team, but it did even more for the sport of stock car racing.
This is the greatest moment in sports anywhere. Think where any athlete that ever went through what Bill Elliott went through and won $1 million, nobody's ever done. And as Bill said before, there's nothing like being the first.
I've been covering races since 1972, but when Bill Elliott won the million, I think that's when the media explosion happened, because everybody said, goodness, look at NASCAR. You know, there's really something here we need to look at.
And falling down are dollar bills, $1 million bills, apparently for Winston. Bill?
I'll tell you what, I couldn't believe it. When Winston put the money up like November or December, I couldn't believe that I'd be the one that was able to get it. I'll tell you what, I can't believe it.
We're just surrounded by it. This is absolute pandemonium here. The entire grandstand is still standing. Photographers are ready. The emotion of the moment is hard to describe.
Victory Lane was just unbelievable. We had Sports Illustrated guy there. Every newspaper in the country had a story about it. I think it's one of the things when you look at milestones that have happened in NASCAR Winston Cup racing since its inception. Certainly one of the things that's moved the sport forward was the Winston Million and Bill Elliott winning. Bill Elliott became $1 Million Bill from Dawsonville.
We came in here, we worked hard, we did what we had to do, and between Ernie, myself, Dan, the family, we worked hard and accomplished a lot.
When we come back, Darrell Waltrip, Davey Allison, and Dale Jarrett take their shot at history on $1 million date.
$1 Million Date with Jeff Gordon, presented by Action Performance Companies and Burger King.
Here he is, fading just a bit.
Since 1985, only 3 stock car drivers have earned an invitation to the $1 Million Date. The first was Darrell Waltrip in '89. He kick-started the year with an improbable finish at the Daytona 500.
2 to go, and I'm out of fuel. I called Jeff on the radio. I'm in tears. I'm out of gas. I'm good. No, stay out. Come around, take the white flag. The white flag's out. I'm out of gas. I'm not going to make it. Fuel pressure's diving all over the place. I'd been drafting everything that moved. I know you hear it all the time, and it sounds like one of those things that drivers and crew chiefs make up. But the thing ran out of gas coming out of turn 4. I mean, it's pop, but I knew it didn't make any difference. I was going to coast across the line and win my first, and unfortunately only, Daytona 500.
After losing at Talladega, Waltrip and his tied car rolled into Charlotte and captured their second crown jewel at the 600. It was cause for celebration and Darrell's own Icky Shuffle. The hunt for the Winston Million was on again. Next up, the old nemesis, Darlington. Early on, Darrell pushed his Monte Carlo to the limits, running it hard, too hard.
He's running right in front of Brett Bodine, up to the wall, and there he goes into it.
7 years later, the next challenger arose from a family of racing legends. Davy Allison seemed destined to take home the million.
You know, I always felt Bobby Allison was, if not the best, one certainly right there with the best. His son was better.
In only his 5th year on the NASCAR Winston Cup circuit, Davy roared into the season, winning at Daytona and then again at Talladega. After a misfire at Charlotte, Allison and Darlington were paired for yet another $1 million date.
And that's the guy that could win a bonus of $1 million, and he's where he needs to be to win.
We're at Darlington, and we're going to win this race. We have a really good race car, and it comes up to making the decision that we have some clouds in the sky that look like maybe rain.
Rain or no rain, they can't afford to run him out of fuel here at Darlington and possibly lose a lap and lose a chance at the Winston Million. So they got to roll the dice. We're watching for Davey to come.
The Yates team decided to play it safe and take a pit stop to refuel. Unfortunately, they had made a costly decision.
Take the lead, and now the race has been stopped. The Southern 500 is under red because of rain. Darrell Waltrip's Western Auto Chevrolet, the first car behind the pace car.
It ain't enough to keep us from going the rest of the way.
A big smile from Davey Allison. He knows they still have a good shot at picking up $1 million as he will.
Moments later, a downpour. The race was called, and once again, a driver's $1 million dream was doused. Tragically, Davey Allison would never get another shot.
Davey Allison was one of the best young talents ever to come along. Had a lot of pressure on him from a famous father, from a famous uncle. Davey Allison, had he still been with us, would have won a lot of championships, and I will assure you, would have won the Winston Million.
The '96 season saw a surprising driver make his bid for the Winston Million. With a new team, a new car, and a new sponsor, Dale Jarrett thundered through the competition at Daytona.
And Dale Jarrett is going to pull it off at Daytona, his second Daytona 500 win. Wow! Someone's as good as it was the first time.
At Talladega, Jarrett literally lost by inches as Sterling Marlin edged out the number 88 Ford by a mere 22/100ths of a second. But forgetting the disappointment, Dale focused in on Charlotte. From the starter's signal to the wave of the checkered flag, Jarrett dominated the race.
Probably the best race car that I've ever had in a race at the 600 that night. Anybody could have won with that car. I was just fortunate enough to be driving it that night, and just a tremendous race for us. And then it hit me that, hey, we've got a chance at something special here. It's only been done one time. And going to a place that fittingly it should be, to win $1 million, you should have to try to do it at Darlington, the toughest racetrack that we race on.
The air was electric at the Mountain Dew Southern 500. Jarrett sat on the pole. Conditions were perfect. The green flag dropped, and Jarrett began to pull away.
Obviously at Darlington, you hear so many times you race the racetrack, and that's basically what I was doing, but the car was so good that at that point in time we were kind of pulling away from everybody, and I was just literally taking it easy. I wanted to make sure that we had a chance at this, and I was a little more than halfway down the backstretch when I saw, I believe it was the 33 car, get sideways in the corner, entering turn 3. But, you know, I'm coming up to lap someone this early in the race. You'd think they've probably got handling problems anyway, and so I just kind of dismissed it.
Oh, he's in the wall! Jarrett is in the wall! I think Brett Bodine must have blown an engine up in front of him. Oh, no!
I'm in the wall.
I was already in the corner with the line that I was running when I realized what was going on, and as soon as I hit the oil, the car took off, and a driver's first reaction when something like that happens is to get on the brake, and that was my first reaction, but that's the wrong reaction, unfortunately, because all that does is make the car slide more. And we still made a run at it, but the car just wasn't what it was at the beginning.
Once again, Darlington would not be tamed.
It wasn't about the money. It was about our team accomplishing something, especially in the first year, that we could do something like this. And the effort that had been put forth by these guys was just tremendous. And I knew how badly they wanted to be a part of history. And I think that that's what was on all of our minds. And in a split second, it was taken away. But that's Darlington.
Yeah, you got 1, 2, 3, and 4.
You know, I wrote a poem about Darlington. No, it was actually right after the Winston Million, and I didn't win it. But I love Darlington in the spring. I love Darlington in the fall. I love Darlington in the winter circle. But I hate Darlington when I'm in the wall.
Easy, boy. Easy, boy.
It's all right.
We'll be right back with $1 Million Date at Darlington.
$1 Million Date with Jeff Gordon, presented by Action Performance Companies and Quaker State. In the rich 12-year history of the Winston Million, just one driver has tamed the track at Darlington. Only 3 others have even earned an invitation to the $1 Million Date. That is, until now. Jeff Gordon began the '97 season at Daytona in hopes of capturing his second Winston Cup championship. An unscheduled stop at lap 110 left Hendrick's number 24 car nearly a lap down. Jeff hacked his way through the dense field, moving from 31st up to the leaders.
Left right there. The car's out of shape. He hit the outside wall, then into Gordon.
A late race pileup spun 3 competitors, and while a tangled mass of metal whirled behind him, Gordon flew low on the apron, passing Bill Elliott to take the lead for good.
Gordon's trying to get by Elliott, going into turn 1.
And Elliott gets him wrong. Look at Labonte going up the outside, and here comes Craven. The Hendrick stable, giving it their best for Rick Hendricks here today.
The Hendrick Racing Team finished 1, 2, 3. A first at Daytona. Jeff Gordon became the youngest driver ever to win the Super Bowl of racing. The Rainbow Warriors and crew chief Ray Evernham once again proved they were ready for anything.
Ray, more than any crew chief that I've ever worked with, plans for things happening that he can't control. And as you can see throughout the 4 or 5 years that Jeff's been winning races, you can see that things don't always go our way. But Ray's prepared enough, the crew's prepared enough, that we can turn a bad situation into a win.
Jeff was now focused on Talladega, where the wide sweeping turns and blazing straightaways can easily snatch victory from a driver's grasp. Jeff Chevrolet was only able to hold the lead 4 times during the blistering 188 laps. As for the Winston Million, the dream would have to wait until the 600 at Charlotte. Rain clouds hung over the motor speedway. It was either an ominous sign or simply gray shadows hiding a silver lining. Overcoming a rain delay and trouble in the pits, Gordon once again set his jaw and came from behind.
Down the straightaway they come for the finish. Closing his wall. It's too late. It's Gordon across to win his second 600.
Real good. It was very important to me. I really wanted to come back. We haven't run really good here the last couple races, so I'm just so proud of these guys and that driver. You know, we had problems. We fought back from a couple different problems, and here we are in Victory Lane, you know, right here in Rick's backyard. Hey, Rick. Hey, Linda. And I got to thank God, too, because we prayed pretty hard with Max to help us make the right decisions, and thank God that we did.
Now only one thing stands in the way of Jeff Gordon and the Winston Million, his date at Darlington. There's no escaping it. The lady in black is the one he'll have to beat.
That's the home of the Southern 500. That says it all. That's Bill France racetrack. That's where I used to watch David Pearson go and just absolutely dominate. And David Pearson was my hero. And now to go back with a shot of winning the Winston Million with Jeff is going to be a thrill. Nothing could keep me away from Darlington.
On that day, the day Jeff Gordon runs for the million here at Darlington in 1997, that day could be a real day in history because he could become the first driver to win the Winston Million since Bill Elliott, which was 12 years ago. He could become the first driver in Darlington's history to win 3 consecutive Southern 500s in a row. And to do that, as young as he is, buddy, he's tough. I am impartial, but I'm pulling for Jeff.
Jeff Gordon's cool under fire. We know that. He's mature beyond his years, so I know he'll go there, and I know he'll do a good job. And I'm sure Ray and he probably have some sort of financial arrangement worked out, and it would probably be in Ray's interest for Jeff to win that $1 million, and I'm sure they'll work together as a team, and I wouldn't bet against them.
When you have someone of his stature that is capturing the attention and raising our sport to another level as he is, he's going to bring in even more media than what we had last year for our opportunity at it. So I think that if Jeff plays it right, he can have a lot of fun, but with the attention that he gets anyway, he's going to have a tough time with that. And, you know, as he won whenever, you know, it was my opportunity, I hope that I can win and take his opportunity away.
Jeff Gordon can pull it off this year. It'll be just as successful this year as it was in 1985 with Bill Elliott. If somebody won it 2, 3, 4 years in a row, it would not be as successful. I don't think there's ever any danger of somebody winning it 2, 3, 4 years in a row. That I'm banking on.
$1 Million Date with Jeff Gordon, presented by Action Performance Companies, the undisputed leader in licensed merchandise for the motorsports industry. It is a challenge with no equal in professional sport, a feat virtually impossible to accomplish. Tenaciously pursued by gifted athletes reaching for the honor and the glory of the Winston Million.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed our look at the Winston Million. I'm sure you can appreciate my interest in it. 11 years is a long time for this track to deny drivers like me a victory. I've been given the invitation to change that, and on Labor Day weekend, I'll accept my $1 million date with the lady in black. I'm Jeff Gordon. Thanks for watching. I'll see you here in Darlington.